Welcome to Hoodwinked. I'm McDonald. I'm your host, and I'm excited to be here. Hey, this is episode 11, and it's a special episode, and it's probably going to be more special episodes until this election season's over. This is an election season podcast today, and probably will be for the next few months until we get decided who's going to be in office decided, right? So before I get started, though, hey, guys, if you guys like what I'm doing, if you want to be a part of it also, here's the biggest thing you can do. I'm trying to build my audience, so get me out. Share it. If you like or don't like, just share it. You never know what other people are going to like. We're on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podchasers, X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And I want to give my special thanks out to my son, Ashton, for putting the music together for me. You can check him out on Spotify under Ace Prod. Thank you very, very much. I'm excited. We are in the middle of election season, and there's a lot going on. You guys all know that the incumbent President Joe Biden has stepped down, and now the Vice President Kamala Harris is running for president, which, hey, it could create history. This is a history type thing, right? No one, I think there's only two women who ran for president. They never got it. There was a black woman who actually ran for president. She was the first black woman to run for president. So this is a big deal. It's a big deal for our country. It's a big deal for our culture. It's a big deal. But man, there's a lot going on here, and there's so much that we need to talk about today. I got offended on a few things. I watched the Republican convention. And for the most part, they put on a pretty good convention, but there's some stuff in here that we're going to unpack, and it's just not good. So I'll tell you guys this straight up. I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat, right? Normally, I don't care who's in office, but I do vote. I try to look at the issues on both sides, see which side, I identify with more, and then I make my vote. So I haven't always voted Democrat. I haven't always voted Republican. I have issues with the voting, right? I think, instead of leaving it up to electoral college, I think it should be, especially the president, should be a popular vote. Probably not ever going to get to that, but it is what it is. But I try to find out the issues that, I'm concerned about, and whichever party speaks to those issues better for me, that's who I vote for. Now, listen, there's some good and bad on both sides. Not either party are perfect parties. They're made up of people, and they make mistakes, and they do silly things. But during this time of year, all this stuff is good for debate. We should be debating it. We should be talking about it, and we should be having our voice heard on it. This Republican convention, though, I've had some concerns just by what I witnessed. So I'm going to, and, by the rhetoric that's just happening right now, like with the, on the Republican side, there's some pretty nasty stuff they're saying about women, about the vice president, and there's some racial slurs going on, whether people believe that or understand that or not, but it's nastiness. And I think both Vice President Harris and ex-President Trump, I think they both have records that can be debated. I think they both have policies that are good and bad for the country. So that's where the debate should be. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about the record. We should be talking about the policies. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. He was president for 4 years. Trust me, there's a lot of political things we could be discussing and dissecting and determining, hey, which one of these candidates fit best for us. But that's not where we're at. It's anything but that. And, I have a lot of friends on both sides. I have a lot of friends who are Republican, a lot of friends who are Democrat. I have a lot of friends who are white, a lot of friends who are black and Hispanic and all these other. I've got a lot of friends. So as I'm looking at this from the lens of, a black man living in America, a 55-year-old black man living in America, who is also an ordained pastor. So because I have some issues with some of the things I saw with relates to faith in the convention. Now, listen, I have not looked at the Democratic convention because it hasn't happened yet. But when it does, I'm going to dissect that one as well. So, and then, the vice president. So Harris hasn't picked her vice president. Trump has picked his vice president. And, man, I don't know if this is a strategic move or what, but it ain't a good move just based off of some of the things that he said. And he's opening up, this Pandora's box that's really going to hurt his party and hurt his candidate. But it is what it is. It's politics, right? So let's get into it. Let's unpack. So my question for today, why is it that white men with power starts to spit out racial innuendo and misogynistic rhetoric when they feel threatened, particularly when it comes to politics? Yeah, there's a lot of racial innuendo. There's a lot of misogynistic rhetoric. It's crazy. The bigger question, though, is why do successful black men stick up for them? Why do they stick up for these people who are throwing out these racial innuendos and throw their own race under the bus? Yeah, that happened. I'm going to get into that. And then my third question to unpack is, why does your religion, particularly evangelical Christianity, why does your religion support such rhetoric? Because it works. I mean, that's how I feel about it. Now, listen, these are my opinions, and my opinions can be wrong. And if someone wants to change my mind on my opinions, I open and I welcome the debate. But for those three questions, let's unpack it, because it needs to be unpacked. Now, I'm going to share something with you guys about me before I unpack this stuff. These things are important to me, but they're not the most important thing to me. I love people, and I try to put out what I want to receive back. So I am a 55-year-old man. I talk about a lot of topics. You guys have heard me talk about racism. You heard me talk about the founding of the country, all these different things. But at the end of the day, I try to be as good as I want someone to be to me, because that's the principle of which I believe in. So these are opinions. These are not attacks on anybody. But when someone stands on national television and says something, I think that we all, as Americans, have a right to have an opinion on it and a comment. Now, if you don't like my opinions, you're more than welcome to not be a part of my podcast and not listen to it. But if you do, share it. So let's unpack this stuff. So sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We've all heard of this nursery rhyme growing up as kids. You get yourself in a little church, you come home, and such and such says such and such about me. Your parents will be like, sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you. Well, I think that's one of the biggest lies, told to young people. And I believe it's one of the biggest lies, because words, I'd rather have my bones broken. I know they're going to heal. I'd rather get punched in the gut. I know I'm going to breathe again. I'd rather, get something done to me physical, because it's probably going to be a temporary thing. I'm going to suffer some kind of pain temporarily. Well, with words, it's not just temporary. It's some of this stuff is permanent. Words matter. They stick. Words are a big deal, right? A big deal. Words can affect people's emotionally. It can affect them intellectually. It can cause physical harm. Words can cause physical harm, and it can have lasting impact on their well-being. These are facts. Words have the power to build people up and tear them down, and I think that's one of the principles that a lot of people say they go by. By treat others as you want to be treated, the golden rule, or use your words to lift people up instead of bringing them down. Actually, the Bible actually tells you that. But man, the words that are being used right now, that they're doing anything but lifting anybody up. And I think that's on both sides. Here's another thing about words. Words have the power to, build people up and bring them down. Words can also be used to fool you, to deceive you, to con you, and to drum up emotion from you. And most importantly, words can be used to mislead you. And I think that that's exactly where we're at right now. And unfortunately, we allow our politics in this country to do just that, mislead us on both sides. This is not just one-sided thing here. I'm going to talk about the Republican side because of the Republican convention, but this is on both sides. It's come to a point to where it's ridiculous. I'm watching television with my wife. I'm here in Missouri. We have to pick a new governor. And, two Republican governors were running for office. Both of them decide they want to have AK-47s in their commercial. One guy is shooting something and the other guy's got it there. The AKs. I don't even understand this because here's the problem. Kids are watching that. And guess what? In this country, in this state, we have a gun problem. So why on earth would you say, I want to be your governor, and you got an AK-47 going, you're going to shoot stuff up? And then there's another candidate who is talking about deporting everybody. He wants to deport everybody, and he has a Hispanic guy repeating after him in Spanish. It makes no sense. I don't understand this silly season. It's so offensive, for white men to stand up and say we sending them all back and have the Hispanic guy repeating after him. This is lunacy. This is ridiculous. I don't know why they think this stuff is appealing to people, but unfortunately it is. And this is why I think we have a massive problem in this country. Now, some people have told me that America has gone, we've come a long way from the hateful racism. And you know what? We have. But we haven't come as far as we need to be. It's the underlying stuff. It's the stuff that, the innuendo. It's all those different things that happen, especially during this time. And more and more, it's becoming more and more prevalent everywhere you go. So we got to figure this thing out. When I was growing up, I was told, never forget where you come from. It don't matter. Listen, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I didn't grow up with money. I had to work for everything that I have. My family, we had to work for everything that we have. But the one thing we were told is do not forget where you come from. Well, what does that mean? It's not just my local family that I live with, but it's my history, my ancestors. Don't forget where we come from. Don't forget that we have people who were in chains, who were beaten, murdered, and raped. Don't forget them, people, when you have some success. Don't forget your lineage. Now, listen, a lot of us didn't know what our true lineage was until we were able to get DNA tests through 23andMe or Ancestry. And then you kind of figure out, oh, man, so this is where I came from. And then we come to America, and these are the things that have happened to us. Hey, don't forget so that you can appreciate things, right? There was a statement, by the way, by the vice president candidate on the Republican side that says Kamala Harris ought to be grateful for this country. Ought to be grateful. I think that's offensive, and I think that's offensive for this reason. I think everybody should be grateful that we're alive. But some people in this country who are my color, they really don't have a lot to be grateful for because life hasn't been good for them. These guys are walking around with this "Make America Great" thing. Number one, look where that derived from. But more importantly, I'm one who believes that America hasn't been great for everyone. It has been great for some people, particularly white men, but it hasn't been great for especially my people. So let me just kind of go through it. Slavery, Civil War, Jim Crow, Civil Rights Movement, war on drugs, prisons being filled up. Not to mention, there was a time where, the people of my color couldn't get jobs, not real ones. not ones that are going to make a difference in them. Now here's the biggest part of that is that original sin has not been dealt with. That original sin has been swept up under the rug. I don't know. Do I believe we as a people we reconciled that? Yeah, but at the end of the day, there's been no restitution. There's been no closure to that subject. So when you walk around, make America great again, it's offensive to a lot of people. It's offensive to people who've struggled their entire life in this country, who have dealt with extreme racism and hatred. What's great about that? So I think we need to be careful when we make these statements, and we need to be careful of where we came from, not forgetting where we came from. Which brings me to the topics that I want to talk about. So I'm watching the Republican convention, and look, they did a good job. They put on a good show. Hey, also before I get into that, I do not condone assassinations. My heart goes out for Donald Trump and his family during that situation. It was terrible. I don't care how much I don't like you or I don't agree with your ideology. I thought we did get past trying to assassinate a president or candidate or ex-president. I think the world is laughing at us. I think it is a terrible time right now as it relates to politics in our country. And I think a lot of it has to also do with our words, has to do with the rhetoric that's been out there. And we'll get into the rhetoric and what rhetoric does. We'll get to that in the next episode. But today I really want to focus on just three things here. Thing number one, I'm watching a Republican convention. And like I said, they did a good job. They put on a good show. They put on it was well done. It was, they were able to pull on your heartstrings and it was good. Seeing Donald Trump's granddaughter come up, I think she basically stole the show. She did a great job, and they tried to show a softer side of Donald Trump, a side that we don't normally see. But I got problems with some of this other stuff. Problem number one, for black men to stand on national television and tell the world that this country was not racist or built on racism is either blind, mute, or lives under a rock. Now, like I said before, I think we have absolutely progressed. I mean, I've had a good life. I haven't experienced a whole lot of racism, but I've experienced racism. Not a lot of it. I don't look for it. I don't put myself in those situations, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean you wipe away history. Because even before my people came to this country or were kidnapped and brought to this country, there's a thing called genocide. There were some Native Americans here who were murdered and their land taken and everything taken. That little story you hear in grade school about the Pilgrims? Yeah, that's all made up stuff. The truth is that Native Americans were here first, and they wanted to be friends, but the other people wanted to take what they wanted, take what they had, and they did. They took their land, and they murdered a lot of them before we got here. And then when we got here, we had to suffer through 400 years of chains, rape, murder, all because of the color of our skin. So for a black man of success who actually has a platform to be able to make change in a way that I can't, to stand up and say these things don't exist, is offensive. I mean, I'm pretty sure they thought they were going to get something out of it. I'm pretty sure they thought, someone they were dangling the vice president opportunity in front of them. And even before the convention, they were out there, these are vice president candidates or what have you. And I'm talking, mainly about Tim Scott. But there was another guy who's a senator. I can't think of his name right now, but he's the one who said that this country's not racist. He also said, in an interview some time back that, Jim Crow was good for us. I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about, where he came from, but he needs to go back up under his rock because I do believe he forgot where he came from. Now, Tim Scott is also a senator, and he's been wanting, he's been all over TV vying for Donald Trump. And you know what? If Donald Trump's his pick, then that's his prerogative. He has a right to do that. But he said some things that were extraordinarily offensive. I mean, he pointed out all the killing of the black people against black people that's going on in Chicago. And then he said, even though there's a gun problem all across the country of which he and the other guy are in positions to do something about, like passing, some kind of law across the board where we try to keep these guns out of young people's hands. I actually live in a state to where there really isn't a gun law. Anybody can go get a gun. Don't matter. I mean, just now they're starting to put legislation up to try to put an age limit on getting a gun. But heck, you don't even need a permit here. It's like the damn Wild Wild West. You could just go get a gun. You can do whatever you want with it. It's a problem. Yet you got these clowns on TV with guns in their hands saying they want to run for governor. And then you have these two guys on a national level who are in positions to actually do something to stop the gun violence by preventing certain types of weapons coming into the country, and they won't do it. But yet he's complaining about it. Yet he's saying this is a problem. And then here's the most offensive thing Mr. Scott said was that our black kids can't read. Well, it's not just the black kids that can't read. There's a lot of kids that can't read. There's Hispanic kids that can't read. There's white kids that can't read. There's Asian kids that can't read. Not the only ones. Now, maybe some black kids in certain areas can't read at a higher level. But at the end of the day, why point out the blacks? And you black. I mean, this makes no sense to me. Why say, hey, we have an education problem in this country and we need to get it fixed? We have kids who can't read. We have an achievement gap across the board. I mean, there's a lot of ways in which you can make your point without pointing out your own race. I mean, you have a platform, you have success, you're in a position where these young people will look up to you. But what you do, you come and you kick them again. You kick them and you keep your damn foot on their neck because you're ignorant and you're stupid to the fact of what those kids are dealing with. And you have forgotten where you came from. Because if you remembered where you came from, and if you really understood the magnitude of your position, no way you say that on national television representing the Republican Party, who is 95%, or I'll say even higher than that, 98% white. Now listen, this I'm not race baiting, I'm stating facts. And there's a reason why they're 98% white. Now, like I told you guys before, I've voted for Republicans. I have a lot of Republican friends. I like some of the policies, but there's the one thing that I can't buy into with some of this Republican Party is the hatred that's in it. Yeah, hatred. And now you got these black men coming on, parading on television on the biggest stage, the Republican convention, and making the point that we black folk don't get it. We can't read, and we just want to kill each other. It's sickening. That's like turning on your own family. It's sickening. It's foolish. It's disturbing. It's hurtful. They need to be called out on it. They need to be called out on it on a high level. It's wrong. You're in a position, someone voted you in a position to do something about it, and you refuse to do it. So you're the biggest culprit. You're part of the problem, if not the problem. And then the Republican Party paraded some black women out. I don't know what their motive was behind this. I kind of have an idea because there was a black vice president that was on the ticket with Joe Biden at the time. So they wanted to get some digs in on that. And they wanted to make a point about her. So, it was a couple of days they got up there, educated people, made some good points. But there was one in particular person that got up there that makes you question why. Because number one, she's never been involved in politics from my understanding. She's a rapper that's not known for rapping. She doesn't have any top hits. You know what she's actually known for? She's actually known for sex tapes with rappers. Now, she does have 20 million people following her on her social media, so maybe that was the motive. But she's not famous for anything other than her social media presence and sex tapes with rap dudes. I think she made a few rap songs or whatever. And now, even after Republican convention, Tim Z has her on tape in a fist fight with a lady. What is the Republican Party trying to point out here? There's some things that kind of go together, because one of the themes now that Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, is running for president, they've attached something to her that says she sucked her way to the top. Very offensive. What are they trying to point out? This is a message to my black people. We want to be successful. We want to be in these positions. We want to have a voice. But don't be a fool for somebody. Count the cost. Don't sell yourself short. Don't sell yourself out. Don't sell your people out. Don't forget where you came from and where your people came from. And more importantly, don't forget the people who are putting you in these positions. Because when they're threatened, they go directly back to the slave master mentality. And that's what we're starting to see. See, this black woman is threatening these guys. She's a threat to Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't want to run against her. He wanted to run against Joe Biden because Joe Biden's numbers were low. People were kind of down on him, and he made a fool of himself in that debate because he's old, not because of his intellect, not because of what his success has been, but because he's old. And everyone has concerns about that. So Donald Trump thought he had it locked up. But now he's dealing with someone who's not Joe Biden, who actually has a record of herself. And we're going to get into that in a second. But black people, hey, look, if you're Republican, great. If you want to vote Republican, great. I hope you're voting on the policies. But don't let people put you in these positions to make you look like an absolute fool. Because that's what y'all look like, especially Tim Scott and that other guy. I can't remember his name. I can't remember his name. But y'all look like damn fools. And you threw your own people under the bus for 5 minutes of fame and an opportunity. Don't sell your people out. Do our culture have issues? Absolutely. But you guys should be in positions that try to help, and you're not. And then I go to what I love talking about. Having been an ordained pastor and led a church and studied the Bible intensely, been through seminary, I understand that there's principles in that Bible that are important And I know that 63% of this country say that they are Christian. They're followers of Christ. I understand the power of Christianity, the religion. So I understand this topic very, very well as well, just no different than I understand the blackness. And you had a guy, Franklin Graham, who's the son of Billy Graham, who was also an icon, specifically to evangelical Christianity, but to Christianity as a whole. Everyone knows his face. Everyone's heard his sermons. And whether you like him or not, he was the face of Christianity in this country. And his son, Franklin, walked in his footsteps. Smart guy, educated, seminary, following dad's footsteps, picks up dad's ministry, creates another ministry on his own, the Samaritan Purse. The guys of helping people and loving people. But I don't know if Franklin Graham forgot the principles that were in that Bible, or he's just gaslighting. I mean, I don't know, because I don't understand how a man of supposed conviction, a man that stands on truth, would be willing to stand on national television and tell the world that Donald Trump is an honest man. Now, listen, I'm not judging Donald Trump, and I'm not judging Franklin Graham. I'm speaking to what has been presented. Now, Franklin Graham didn't have to get up and say anything, but he did. And he could have got up and said, hey, listen, I'm for the Republican Party, which he really shouldn't be because he's the face of Christianity, and there's supposed to be the separation between church and state. I know for me as a pastor, if I stood up in front of my congregation and start telling them, who to vote for and all these different things, that could put my nonprofit exemption status in jeopardy. I don't know why it didn't happen for Franklin Graham, but anyway, we are where we are. There was a saying that, my grandfather told me a lot of things. He gave me a lot of sayings. One of them was, and you guys have probably heard this saying, is that a person who stands for nothing will fall for anything. A person who stands for nothing will fall for anything. Now, this man who is supposed to be representing the good, because he's representing Christ, right? He's a follower of Christ, supposedly. He's this well-known pastor, massive platform, speaks into the lives of millions and millions of people from a spiritual standpoint, which gives him immense power. The things that come out of his mouth, people are just going to automatically believe because of his status and his name, Franklin Graham. So for you to stand on national TV and tell a blatant lie, it's mind-boggling to me. To stand on national television and try to convince the people who are hearing your voice that Donald Trump is a changed man. He prefaced it by saying, a bullet has a tendency to change a man. And I don't disagree with that. I mean, I've never had a bullet, but I would think that if your life flashed before your eyes, I mean, there will be some kind of change in your personality, some kind of change in your ideology, some kind of change in your attitude. I mean, that's what logic says. So I don't fault him for thinking that logic was there, but he said a couple other things. He said that he and Donald Trump were really good friends and that he had known Donald Trump for a long time and that Donald Trump was an honest man. So in other words, he's taking up with Donald Trump. He's endorsing Donald Trump's and saying that Donald Trump tells the truth. Well, what does that do for people who just believe whatever Franklin Graham says because of his status? They're going to start believing that too. But here's what I know is that Franklin Graham knows that was a lie, just like we know that was a lie. Now, I don't know why Franklin Graham did that or said those things, but I know what he said was not true. because Donald Trump has demonstrated to the entire world what his character is and that he is not a truth teller. Those are facts. Donald Trump has also demonstrated to the masses of his poor character, even before he came in to be a president. And I'll get to that in a few minutes. But I want to throw something out. I want to throw a warning out to these people who just follow blindly. I want to throw it. You're responsible for your actions. You're responsible for what you do. And there's principles in that book. There's principles in that book that we should take very seriously. And you can't have it both ways. You can't have love and hate. They don't go together. They don't mix. There's a scripture in the book of Revelation that says, either for me or against me. If you lukewarm, I'll spew you out of my mouth. So either you have to stand for truth or you stand for a lie. There's no in between. There's no compromise. Now, everybody, now listen, if you're voting for Donald Trump just specifically based off his policies, not his character, okay. But then don't try to convince me that Donald Trump's a great guy and he's a follower of Christ and he loves God and all of these different things. Now, listen, I don't know the man's spirituality. I don't judge that. But I can judge what he does. I can judge what comes out of his mouth. That's called discernment. That's preventing yourself from being a fool and falling for anything. Remember I said earlier that words have the power to con you. Words have the power to deceive you. And here's what I know about deception. There's always an element of truth in deception. But I don't understand for the life of me. Now, if I know Franklin Graham's platform, surely Franklin Graham knows his platform. Surely Franklin Graham knows the power which he has over people. Surely Franklin Graham knows that if he says something, most all people who know and believe in him are going to believe whatever he says because he's a man of the cloth. He's Billy Graham's son. He's done all these wonderful things. He's a truth teller, supposedly. All I'm saying is, church, don't be deceived. You know, Maya Angelou said something. She wrote in a book, she goes, when a person shows you who they are, believe them the first time. That is truth. That's fact. And not only has Donald Trump showed us who he is once, he showed us multiple times. Look, I don't know the man personally. I don't know if all of this is a show. And, I was touched by what his granddaughter and, said about him and his daughter-in-law and, how loving he is to them and at home. And, and I think that that's true. And I think that that's great. But what he's demonstrated publicly is all we have to go off of. And running for president shouldn't be a show because you will be the most powerful person in the world. And the things that you do, the choices that you make has an impact not only on every person in America, but everyone around the world. So it's the most powerful position in the world. So what he has demonstrated to us, let's set the policies aside, is anything but good character, anything but truth. So as a pastor who has this massive platform and the ability to speak into so many people's lives on behalf of God, to not stick to that basic principle, beyond disturbing, and which is why I do not sign up for Christianity, religion anymore. I consider myself to be a person of faith that has principles that I try to live by every day. Now, some people argue with me and say, well, Franklin Graham's a man and he makes mistakes. Yeah, that's not a mistake he should have made. He should have been very aware of what he was doing when he was doing it, who was watching, and who he was doing it for. If he didn't know any of that, then he shouldn't be in that position. That's how I feel. So you got these three elements. You got these black men who lived all their life in America to stand up and say the things that they said and throw their own race under the rug. And then you have these black women who come out and make their statements. And, honestly, these racist people are more racist against black women than they are against black men. Yet these guys stand up and they say, oh, how great these people are, or how great this man is. And then the Republican Party picks a person that has a really, really sketchy background. I mean, I don't know. I don't want that kind of fame. I remember where I came from. I understand who I represent. It's not just Jesus that I represent. I represent my family. I represent my boys. I represent my wife, my mom, my dad, my ancestors, my grandparents, my cousins, my uncles, my nieces, my nephews, my aunts, of all who are black, with the exception of my wife. I have a big responsibility for my culture, just like these guys do. And then the next thing that you hold very dear to you is your religion, right? Your faith. And then the face of that comes up and does it. I mean, what is going on? What is going on? Now, let me conclude with this point. Let's do a little exercise. We got two candidates. And I don't want to talk about their policies or their record right now. Let's set those aside for a second. And let's just spit some facts about who these people are with regards to qualifying for president of the United States. We have one who's a woman, educated woman, was a prosecutor in one of the largest cities in the country, in California. She was a attorney general for California, the largest state in the union. She then became a senator, a U.S. senator, not a state senator, a U.S. senator. And then she became vice president. Pretty qualified to be president of the United States. Pretty qualified. Even more qualified than Barack Obama. Even more qualified than most presidents. And then you have Donald Trump, a billionaire, a business mogul, very successful, a lot of money, TV show host, very successful program, The Apprentice, had the beauty pageant, and then he became president. So now let's look at their other side. Vice President Harris has never been to jail. She doesn't have a felony on her record. She's not have been, there's no legal issues she's ever been in to any of our knowledge. But then you have Donald Trump. Before he was even president, years ago, he and his father were sued by the federal government twice for racial discrimination because they didn't want blacks living in any of their properties. Those are facts. Look it up. He had a charity that was also sued and made to be closed down and fined and sued for fraud of his own charity. He recently was convicted of 34 felonies. Now, listen, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, it's trumped up charges, yada, yada, yada. Okay, whatever. Let's see what happens on the appeal. No, he did an appeal, but here's the thing. in this country, if we follow the Constitution, then the court of law is the court of law. The last saying. And it wasn't the judge who made that determination, but it was 12 people, a jury, who made that determination. So I'm not going to go off that. I'm not going to go away from that. Those are real felony convictions for fraud. Fraud. 34, of which, if he became president again, he wouldn't be able to travel to most countries because they don't accept felons in their country. But anyway, he's got 34 felonies. He has a civil lawsuit that he lost for sexual assault, of which he has to pay millions and millions of dollars. He still has court cases pending, criminal court cases pending. He hasn't accepted that he actually lost the election. And he says really, 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 really nasty things about people. So here's my question to you. Let's keep those qualifications. Let's keep this history, right? And do one thing. Change the color of Donald Trump's skin and tell me if Donald Trump would still be running for president of the United States. Now, here's a fact that I know 100%. And I'm just pulling from my experience as a 55-year-old black man in America. No way that man would be on anybody's ballot. He wouldn't even, no way. No way, if he's anything other than a white man, that man's running for president and an entire Republican Party has gotten behind him to compromise their own integrity. No way. No way. No way. No way. It wouldn't happen. And I go one step further. If he was a white woman, he wouldn't be on the ballot. Now you tell me if this country has moved forward. You know, they took something out of school that they need to put back in, and that's critical thinking. We all need to critically think about these things. We need to call it what it is, and we need to stand on truth, wherever that leads us. Stop compromising your race. Stop compromising your past. Stop compromising your principles. Stop compromising for this man or this party who blindly believes in him. Do what Maya Angelou said. Believe him the first time. So here's the thing. If you can't accept the truth for what it is, or maybe you do accept the truth for what it is, and you vote for him and you support him, then maybe you're a part of the problem too. But at the end of the day, anybody who says that they have any kind of faith convictions, any kind, you should be standing on those principles. It's very, very clear. And that's not judging him. That's speaking the truth. I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris because she don't have that baggage. She may not have the best policies, and she may have some bad things in her record. But for the most part, she seems like a pretty decent person. We got to get to a point, America, to where we care about people. And I'm speaking specifically to these people who claim that they follow Jesus Christ or they live off of biblical principles. Our principles aren't supposed to be compromised. We should have the courage to stand on truth. Even if that puts someone in the White House that you don't want in the White House. We still have to stand on truth. And Donald Trump is anything but truth. That's what I got for y'all today. I got more coming. Stay tuned. Share this. Until next time. Peace out.